All right, I'll give everybody about 30 seconds more and then we're going to get cranking here. But we've got a great group. And the interesting thing is probably not a ton of Steelers fans, but a ton of Merril Hoge fans. Like lots of respect for you, Merril.
Well, Scott, I got a lot of respect for you. Everybody that is associated with you, what you do, what you have done, what you guys continue to do. So I'm much honored to be a part of today.
I appreciate it, man. I'd be wearing t-shirts every day if I was in shape like you. Holy Moses.
No, it must be the camera angle, Scott.
Before we get to, what's your workout routine? Is it?
Well, I tell people there's 3/3 to perfect health. 1/3, well, there's a third everybody forgets that, when you're thinking about health and fitness, it's, so 1/3 is obviously training, activity, doing something. The other third is nutrition, what you consume, how much you consume. And then the other third is rest. And they're all critical. I don't think you could label one more important than the other. It's when they all work, when you have all of them that work well together, you have perfect health, and that's, and I think it all starts with accountability with your health, because I get friends I guess I had a friend here he sat down for 20 minutes and I go, you know what you did for 20 minutes? You gave me 20 minutes of excuses. That's all you did.
Right.
You just gave me 20 minutes of excuses, bro. You control all of those. Don't have enough time. I got this going. I go, hey, I don't know anybody that doesn't have all that going on. At the end of the day, I just think it's important you invest in yourself. The better you are, and the more you take care of yourself, the better you can be for others. Really, it's not a selfish approach. I just think it's a healthy approach, quite honestly.
Right. No, I love it. All right, guys, we're gonna get started.
You switching over to speaker view, Scott?
Am I on speaker view? Yeah, I'm on speaker view. So let me, for those of you who are new to a Talent Champions Council Masterclass, the format is we talk. So myself and Merril, I've got a bunch of questions for Merril. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes. And then the cool part of these is we then open it up and you can ask questions directly to Merril. So what you'll do is simply say in the chat that you have a question, and Kathy will tee you up and I'll introduce you and you can ask your question directly to Merril, which will be cool. So that's the format. Let me give you just a quick rundown. So we have a bunch of master classes set up. Our next one is with Brian Scudamore. Brian is the CEO of O2 Brands. He's the guy who started the company 1-800-JUNK. He is an amazing entrepreneur. He's built a massive company, and he's a legend in the business world. Then we have Megan Riley. A lot of people know her from Shark Tank. She got a deal for Mark Cuban, but she's built a massive business with her sister called Tippy Toes. So we're going to talk about her entrepreneurial journey. Then we have Antonia Hawk. She is the CEO of the Ritz-Carlton Leadership Center. She's absolutely amazing. We're following that up with Dr. Jeff Spencer. Dr. Spencer has coached Tiger Woods, Richard Branson, Lance Armstrong, like you name it. Dr. Spencer has coached all those people. Oh, and by the way, he's an Olympian. And oh, and by the way, he's a world famous artist. So how he's crammed that all into one life is a story unto itself. And then we've got Katrina Gazarian, who's the CEO of Game Day HR. And she actually she emceed the masterclass with Jack Driscoll from the Eagles and Mark Brown from the Jets that we did many, many months ago. So we're excited about those master classes. We'll announce the dates and the times coming up. And one last thing I wanted to let everybody know. So the fourth book in the Standing O series just came out last week. All the proceeds go to the Blankets of Hope. So 100% of the proceeds for all of these books go to charity. Brandy Chastain wrote the cover quote, and there's 42 incredible authors. So if you get a chance, pick it up. If you get a chance to buy the original Standing O, you will find an amazing chapter from Merril Hoge in here. And the original book, Coach Merril wrote the foreword, Tiki Barber wrote the cover quote. And again, all the proceeds go to charity. But today, we're here with a legend, all-pro running back from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and also played for the Browns, so two iconic franchises. He's spent 25 years, I believe, with ESPN as an analyst. He's a best-selling author. I've read two of his books, Find a Way and Brainwashed, which is his latest phenomenal books. Definitely pick those up. But we are extremely excited to be joined by Merril Hoge today. So Merril, thanks for joining our members of the Talent Champions Council. We appreciate it.
Absolute honor, Scott. Looking forward to it.
And I am a little surprised you got a Bears jersey behind you.
Well, I'm and I am in Pittsburgh, which makes it even more odd.
Yeah.
I'm not in my place in Cincinnati, Kentucky area. Actually, I have where my studio is. This was kind of like a self-made thing, really quick. And
Right.
the only thing I actually had here, ironically, the Bears on the 75th the 100th anniversary. They sent us, they sent all the players a framed jersey for all the players that played over the 100 years with them. So
Amazing.
it's something I had, so I put that up there. I love the Bears organization. I mean, I wish I would have. My plan was to play there a lot longer than I did, but it was still one of the great franchises in NFL history. It still is today, and produced a lot of great, amazing players, like one that you got right there, pound for pound, the greatest player to ever play.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So I'm a rabid Minnesota Vikings fan, like the biggest on the planet. And so I've had a tough life, to say the least. So to see a Minnesota Vikings fan wearing a Walter Payton sweatshirt tells you the amount of respect that I have for the person that he is. And obviously I didn't know him, and you, I think, had the good fortune to know him. I think what's really interesting is I want to start out. Let's talk about those three words, find a way, how that relates to Walter Payton, and kind of the origin story of the impact that those words had on your life. I think when you were probably like, what, 10, 12 years old. I'd love to just share with everybody kind of how Find a Way became almost like the mantra for you.
Yeah, well, the simple term is the words "find a way." They've helped me live a dream and fight to live. They're supposed to help me just live a dream, and you go back to where it all started. It actually started as a kid. I was 12 years old. I had heard everybody. I'm sure everybody will be able to identify with this a little bit during your childhood. You probably heard, "Hey, write down your goals." You probably heard at some point, what are you going to be? What do you want to do? And I was intrigued as a kid. I remember one of the first times I ever got asked, like, what do you want to do? I was only like 8 or 9. And clearly I don't expect anybody to know at 8 or 9. I didn't know why I would be asked that at 8 or 9, but I was actually glad, because I remember thinking, man, I have no idea, but I'm going to think about it. I never thought about that. And I loved sports. I was playing it, but I loved football the best. Now this is, back in 1972, 73 time. You have to almost set the stage, because there might be some younger folks listening in on this, and they're like, so, it's not like today. You're lucky if you had a TV. Like, we didn't have a TV at the house when I was really young.
Yep.
Until we went to this other house. Then we had only one TV, and then you're lucky if you had 3 channels. And so what your resources were very limited. So first time I ever actually saw football on television was ironically the Green Bay Packers staying in the division. And I can't remember who they were playing, but it's the first time I saw them on television. Now, that's not what captivated me or captured me. It was like, I have an answer. I know what I want to do. That's what I want to do. I'm doing it in the backyard. That's what I want to do. And so I couldn't wait for somebody to ask me that question. Next time I got asked, one of 4 things was always said to me right after I said, hey, I want to, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to play in the National Football League. They go, oh, you know how hard that is? Oh, man, you know what the odds of you playing in the NFL are? Oh, don't put all your eggs in one basket, son. I wouldn't want you to be disappointed one day, or impossible. This is probably why I see things through a child's eyes, maybe than a lot more than most adults do. It's because of the things that happened to me as a kid. The people who were supposed to encourage me were the first ones to discourage me.
Yep.
And then it speaks to young people. They're resilient. Like I never got fazed by that. And I never got discouraged by that, but it brings me to my first moment of truth in life. And actually where the words find a way would become a principle in my life, the foundation of my journey. If I wanted to base it on one thing, I got my own room and I was putting up my goals. I'd asked my dad to make me an entire wall of cork. He made me a half a wall, which was big enough. And I was pinning the goal. I will play in the National Football League up. Pitcher Walter Payton was my favorite player. A pitcher of the Pittsburgh Steelers, my favorite team at the time as a kid. And I started to revisit all the things that people had said. And I remember at that moment, the more I thought about that, the more I lacked any sense of energy towards achieving that goal. And as I was going through that process, that's when the words "find a way" popped into my head. I mean, it completely changed my energy. I got so excited about I will play in the National Football League. I got so excited. And here's what happened. I mean, I didn't realize it then. As time moved on, I realized what had happened. Okay. My energy had changed because my mindset had changed. Okay. Now I was in charge. I was excited about that. And I was going to do the one thing that I know that there's not a soul can't do. It doesn't matter what your goal, your dream, or your circumstance is. Take action. Like do something about that circumstance. And I got moved by that. And quite honestly, that sent me on a journey. I started to my first goal was like, well, or, as far as action goes, who can help me? Like, who's really, like, anytime I think you're trying to attempt a new craft, take a new chapter in life, you're going down a path you've never been. I think it's always wise if you can find people who have been down that journey, hey,
Yep.
Tap into that knowledge, help them. I mean, learn things from them that might help you not make the same mistake and learn a little quicker and faster. And so that action sparked Walter Payton. I'm like, I use my favorite player. I watched him on television, seen interviews, but I thought there was probably more. And I'm like, what could I find out about Walter Payton that might help me? And I'll wrap it up here because actually I stumbled across a quote by Aristotle that comes on this journey, which is another part of why it's so important to take action, because you're going to learn things by doing things that you never dreamed you would learn.
Yep.
And that becomes powerful to the journey. But it was an interview that I saw by Walter Payton. This is several years later. It was actually called Winning in Life. It was a tape he was putting out. And it was based on a bunch of things: charity work, family. And now listen, I'm 15 years old at the time. So when he was going charity, family, I'm like, not interested. Then I hear training. I'm like, oh, no, that interests me. Now that's what I'm interested in. That's what I want to know. What does he do? And I'd heard about these hills he had run, but I'm like, there's got to be more. And when I got the tape, I'm scrolling through trying to find stuff that interests me. And I can't remember if it was the first question or where I ended up stopping the tape. But he honestly said something as profound as I've ever heard a human being say it. It still moves me today. it's still pivotal in my life when I think about it. It's actually what I've added to Find a Way, quite honestly. But the interviewer asked him, what makes you better than everybody else? And I'm like, oh, that's what I wanted to know. Like, that's what I would ask him. And he said, I want it more than they do. Every day of the week. He said, you see, in the off season, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 o'clock in the morning, when I go run that dirt hill and nobody else wants to join me, I want it more than they do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. When we're during the season and there's not 65,000 fans in the stands, cameras aren't rolling, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays, I'm getting prepared. I want it more than they do. And then a Sunday at 1 o'clock, which is the only thing you see, I want it more than they do. Well, I'll tell you this, right? That moment right then, I was like, maybe I'm just young enough, or I was so primed to just have something I'd never heard before. I'm like, holy cow, I can do that. And if you really think about it, there's not a soul that can do that. And there is no age that you apply that, or can apply that or should apply that. I mean, it'd be great if you could apply it to earlier in your life, because I'm grateful for that everyday aspect. Because what I learned is every day is important, because not every day is a good day. There's a lot of hard days. And when you have that mindset and you program that into your approach, you plow through those tough days. You make it the road easier and smoother with that approach. It's not, oh, I'm going to do this when it works for me or it's convenient. Well, I can promise you this 100%, there's going to be limited success in that approach. The everyday approach, I will tell you this, you move mountains, you accomplish things. There's nothing that doesn't face me with that approach that I don't believe I can't overcome or deal with. And so to have learned so many things, not just from Walter Payton, so many things, but that one was instrumental at a young age. Right after those words had really resonated, that energy, and it just continued to really build, Scott. It's applicable to my day, every day, to this moment right now as I sit here. If I was in my real office, I'd to point to the left, I'm like, I have the words "find a way" every day there, and that is applicable to whatever comes my way that day. And it has been pivotal, and why I enjoy speaking and going around the country is like, that's really applicable to everybody. They can take it and apply it any way they see fit. They ain't got to in fact, I encourage you, don't do it my way, you do it your way, but you take those tools and you apply them to your challenges, your goals, your dreams, and just incredible, magical things happen. And to be in charge like that, to have that empowerment is a powerful thing. It is a powerful thing.
Well, I think it's, it makes you feel like you are in control, which you are. And I don't know who, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was something like, Walter Payton wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest.
Well,
he was just the best.
Yeah, Scott. I should probably share that. Like, there might be a lot of people listening who don't know who Walter Payton was or is. He was when this video came out, he was the all-time leading rusher, pound for pound, still the greatest player to ever play in the history of our league. And this was always said about him, which was always confusing as a kid. He wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the fastest. He's just the best. Well, when you're a kid, you just think, okay, you always say, well, he's the biggest, strongest, fastest. That's why he's the best. Well, clearly what made him the best was his mindset. Now, to bring a Minnesota thing in here, one of the great experiences of playing for the Chicago Bears is Fred Cato, who took care of Walter into his entire career. The athletic trainer there was my athletic trainer. He would take me every day before I got ready for practice or a game. We religiously, I would get up there before practice and say, okay, Fred, man, I need a Walter Payton story. I need something. I need some energy here. And I remember one day he said, well, let me tell you this. He goes, remember when Walter Payton set the all-time single rushing record, like 278 yards, the single rushing record for a game.
Yep.
I'm like, I don't remember. Well, it was against the Minnesota Vikings.
Of course.
In Minnesota. He said, here's what happened that week. Okay, Walter's knee was, I can't remember which knee it was, but he had hurt his knee, couldn't practice all week. They got to the game. He got dressed. They drained. I was in the ballpark of around 16, 20 cc's of fluid off his knee, which is a significant amount in any joint. And he went out and he just walked around the field while everybody was warming up. And then he walked in and he's like, I'm ready. Because that's the day he broke the single game rushing record on that day.
Amazing.
I was like, it is. I was like, that dude was, anyway. So so many things about Walter Payton. A lot of layers to him aside from being a great football player. I got to know him, and I met him my rookie year, and that impacted my life. That is a significant thing that I think about constantly, based on how he handled me. But I say it still goes back to things that can resonate with you, to inspire you, to really, that word of action is just so important for whatever journey you're on, whatever you're searching for. Because I have a problem with 100% certainty. If you do nothing, expect nothing.
Right.
But doing something, does it mean you're always going to achieve your goal? I always say yes, because here's why. There's many times I've been on a journey and something has come across my path that would never have come across my path because I wouldn't have been doing this. And it takes me another way. I don't get to where I was going, but I go somewhere better. So I in a way, I don't think I've ever failed at anything. I've learned so much, and I've went different paths on a lot of goals. But had I not taken that path and action, would never have happened.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And I do love that because, I think we all want to be successful no matter what we're doing. And, you don't have to be the biggest, the fastest, the strongest. And that certainly, it's easy to see in a football environment where you see a Jerry Rice or you see a Tom Brady, and they fit that mold too. They're not the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, but they are the best. And it's that mindset. And in business, you didn't have to graduate from Harvard. You didn't have to do this or that. You've got to have that mindset and that discipline. And I always think, when I think of you, I think whether this is your playing career or whether this is your philanthropic things that you're involved in, or this is your work as an analyst, I always think of passion and I think of positive energy. And I think, I remember when you were going through your cancer scare, I've got to believe that those things are probably two of the things that pulled you through that as well.
Well, I will confirm this. The words "find a way" end up coming back to me through my daughter, who says, "Find a way." It had evolved into a parenting tool. Quite honestly, it really inspired me to try to be a better parent, try to break some chains that happened to me as a kid, not pass them on. That was one goal, and then it really helped me look at, what is it to be a good parent? What are the tools I need? And I end up using this tool actually because it's a great coaching tool for me too. It's used daily for me, but I judge my kids in the yardsticks of their years and not mine. It's given me two things in my life: patience and perspective at all times. And I use the story all the time about when my son was 5 years old and he came home, wanted get these Nike socks from Dick's. So we go to Dick's, we buy socks for $5.99. He comes home, all these buddies come over, they're in the backyard. I check on them 15 minutes later. They all got their shoes off, running around in socks I bought for $5.99. I'm like, oh, not on my watch. I'm thinking grass stains and holes and $5.99 in this 35-year-old head. When I get to the door, yardsticks of his years, not mine, patience and perspective come over me. I open the door. I said, "Hey, Bo, come here." Bo comes running up. And I said, "Hey, son, why would you have your shoes off and be running around in socks I bought for $5.99? He said, "Well, because I'm faster, Dad." Well, I've been there. You take your shoes off. You think your feet are lighter. You run faster. And I said, "Well, that's really not the case." I go, "Take your socks off. Let me show you something." Take socks off, grass stains I'm telling you about, no holes because I caught him quick enough. I said, "Well, see, when your shoes come off and you run on socks, you're sliding on the grass. So you feel like your feet are lighter, but you're not faster.
Right.
If you take the socks off I bought for $5.99 with the shoes and you have bare feet, then you're going to be faster. And he's like, really, Dad? I said, yeah, really, son. And he said, thanks a lot, Dad. Off he goes. I never see Bo again run around in socks I bought for $5.99. And it just, at that moment, I was like, okay, would Bo have understood $5.99 laundry, holes? No, that's not the time to share with Bo things that a 35-year-old is thinking. And that moment was more about him trying to become faster. But it has been a pivotal tool, and Find a Way has been instrumental from that. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was actually my daughter. You know, I got consumed in, and if not overwhelmed in, chemotherapy and dying, because the last thing my doctor told me, aside from I was going through brutal chemotherapy and I'd have to shave my head, I'd be sick, I'd be tired. He said, I can't guarantee this is going to work. Now, I still am not, I mean, I can tell you of the emotions that happened at that moment, but I call it the dark days of diagnosis, because that wasn't the only day of bad news. It just continues to get worse. And the chemotherapy and dying was overwhelming. It was, it's all I could think about. And it was my daughter who, after I shared with them all the things that were going to be different, because their dad, not going to have hair, bald and sick on a couch, and not what they're accustomed to. And I thought I ought to get ahead of it versus behind it, because I had a couple of weeks. And it was my daughter who came across the room, and I didn't remember getting in my lap, to be honest, because I was just so gone. And she put her arms around my neck and she was shaking me to get my attention. And I finally addressed her, and she says, well, then you need to find a way, Dad. And I'm telling you, that's like it sends chills to me today, because it changed me. Like just what happened at age 12. I mean, dying wasn't an option. Being sick and bald, laying on a couch, not an option. Bald's going to be an option. Being sick and tired, not an option. And it changed my energy. I was in charge again. I was now focused on things. I tried to find out who's been through what I've been through, which I did. And I orchestrated a plan before I walked in there, even though I would alter that plan based on when I really went through a 12-hour treatment and the brutality of it. But my mindset through the whole approach, I am telling you, Scott, with those words, with the everyday, I had learned from a Chuck Noll lesson that I'd learned in my life about being uncommon. I applied all of the things I learned inside the white lines to the greatest challenge I've ever been faced with. And they were instrumental. They were instrumental in my physical and my mental and my emotional dealing with it and my outcome. And I'm so grateful for that. And that doesn't take anything, you don't have a special gene to do that. I used to think, that's what Walter Payton was going to share. Well, I'm genetically made different, and that's not the truth. It still goes back to your willingness and your commitment to every day, to just that relentless approach. And, having goals on a board, that's why I like them, because listen, I don't think anybody's powerful enough to just keep the energy and the thought process going all the time, just because not every day is a good day, and you need a reminder daily, a day where you start and end your day. Here's my goals, here's my objective, here's my mindset. Now I enter the world, I get destroyed, I come back, I'm going to reset it before I go to bed. Like, I'm not going to be completely defeated. I'm going to reset for tomorrow, because they happen. But you win more than you lose. It's just like sports. You don't win them all. And the more powerful you become with that, the more it can be translated and applied to everything. And it's not just sports, clearly. It is about a challenge. It's about professional, business. Any type of environment is applicable and can be applied to.
And I love that. That's actually how I was going to wrap this session up, is that the beauty of everything that you're saying is it applies to everything we do, whether it's our fitness, our health, our business, anything. it just applies. So we've got a bunch of people that are very, very excited to meet you and talk to you. We're first going to go to a great friend of mine, Rob Anderson in New York. Rob, you are up with the great Merril Hoge.
Scott, I gotta pay homage to that sweatshirt again, and I appreciate everyone's patience with the Walter Payton jerseys. Our second born is named Payton, and Walter is a steadfast fixture in our life. Merril, I am and grateful to connect, and I would like to, over the course of your career, I watched you transition from fullback in the days when fullback was a position in the NFL, and the times of the Mike Allstott and the Tom Rathmans. Thanks for your patience with the noise. And then from transitioning to tailback and ultimately to H-back, you have incredible hands and you can do so much. And I really thought that you were fantastic as a commentator. I'm not just blowing smoke, but I really did. Your energy, your positive nature. And I watched you transition from that. And you always look really sharp on camera as well. So, Merril, now that you're out of football and not on camera on a weekly basis, what does that transition look like for you as far as what direction to go in? And how do you know what direction to go in based on all that you've accomplished and all that you've experienced? Super grateful for you.
Well, Rob, I appreciate that. And I love the Walter Payton love. There's I could spend an hour actually sharing Walter Payton stories. And actually, Walter Payton will be significant in this answer in a way. And Chuck Noll, there's a mixture. You know, Chuck Noll was a tremendous leader. What makes a great leader is they're consistent, they have integrity, and they know how to challenge and teach. And Chuck was great at challenging us to be wise and judicious when we left the season. You know, he said, "Listen, you got a stage very few get. Don't abuse it, but use it. You know, do things to look for your life's work." First time I ever heard your life's work. When I got drafted, I'm like, "Well, here's my life's work." And he was like, "This is not your life's work. I don't care how long you play." And even Tom Brady will not play longer than he does play, even if he plays another 5 years. So that being said, he was instrumental in widening my scope about being prepared to do other things. I was just wise enough to realize that I'm sitting in front of a guy I probably never sit in front of again. I'm grateful for that, and I listened. I remember I went back and got my education, and then I started working on different things that I would want to do when I got done playing. Well, that tool set really helped me when my career ended early in Chicago. Even though I went through a depression, I went through a period of time that I can identify with people who have lost everything, who have no purpose, and things spiral out of control. I'm helping and working with a program right now where I mentioned to them, I go, you know, one of the most important things when someone's going through depression, they're struggling emotionally, there's still a point of accountability. There's a moment where you're still accountable, and you still have to take a part of people that are trying to help you and the things that you've done. And I was laying on the couch, and I remember thinking that, I was like, I'd been to counseling, I'd been a month or so, my career had ended. And I'm like, gosh dang, you have responsibility in this. You know, you can be miserable the rest of your life and lay on this couch because you no longer can do the thing that you've been doing for 22 years. But for almost a decade, you've been working on your life's work, and you'd created some other avenues. And so the two of them that I'd worked on were coaching and broadcasting, ironically, at the time. And I really casted my lines out everywhere. I went in every relationship that I could remember or I had built. And I went down that, and I said, whichever fish I catch first, that's where I'm going, whether it's coaching or broadcasting. And broadcasting, actually, it was ESPN hired me to launch ESPN2. And Mr. Rooney actually hired me to be the first player in the broadcasting booth for the Steelers, which most people don't know that. And that's okay, because I hardly ever talked, so nobody knew I was there. But what I'm getting at is I learned to have other things in the make for when my career was over. So at ESPN, I'd written a book, and I loved speaking. And honestly, that challenge came from sitting in a chemotherapy chair. I had a dear friend. I was telling him actually about Find a Way, actually, how this whole thing had come about. And he was like, well, you need to write a book. I said, Charlie, I survive, I'll write your book. And I really put it off there. About a year later, he called me up. He said, remember that deal? And I was like, ah, Charlie. Yeah. But that took me like 5 years to write that book. And that's why I talk about taking action. If you take action, it takes you places. So that challenge, after I'd written that book, while I'm in my broadcasting career, speaking became such a passionate part of what I like to do, that when my career ended at ESPN, I was already branching out into that. And I had already really had a vision. I wasn't going to do this for 50 years. I liked speaking so much. There were some other things that moved me. And so I did have another option that I had prepared for, but I go all the way back to being 21 and Chuck Noll talking about your life's work, use the stage, don't abuse the stage, and branch out to things. And he said, I remember, this is actually something I've learned when people I maybe have not prepared because they expect to be in a career, okay, whatever they're in right now. And then, shoot, just a year ago, I'm sure a lot of people's careers got disrupted, and people are probably doing things different now than they were doing a couple of years ago, and they never expected that. I've run into a lot of people like that, and they're like, what do you do? Where do you go? And I'm like, well, I always start with your passion. What do you really love? What do you love doing? What do you want to do? What moves you? And if you can find ways to move into that as your craft, then I was always felt like that gave you an advantage, because you're passionate enough with it, you love it, and you'll stay committed to it, and you'll find something. There's so many people that didn't think of it that way, or they're thinking about, well, let me go get a job. And that's okay sometimes too. Sometimes that's just a requirement, and that's just where you got to go. But if you can have ways where you can feed your passion, and sometimes a passion evolves, like speaking evolved. If you saw my grades in high school and college for speaking, it'd be like, in fact, my professors probably like, are you kidding me? And when I wrote 2 books, you talk about some other professors going, oh my gosh, there's hope for everybody if that cat can write some books. So I go back to the journey, like so many people have inspired me. Chuck Noll may be one of the greatest to open my mind and widen my scope to things to be prepared for and different ways to go about things. And I did not learn that tool set early. I think I could have been in trouble, especially the way my career ended, because I had done so much work in preparing for that. I had options. Had I done no work, that would have probably been a more than devastating thing in my life, even though it was devastating at the time.
Love it. So we've got 5 people lined up. We're going to try to see if we can get you guys in 20 minutes, but we're going to go to Matt Huff next. You're up with Merril.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Merril, absolutely honored to talk to you today, man, on so many levels. I grew up watching you. I'm a huge football fan. I love that you played the position where no one gets any credit, and I would argue one of the hardest jobs in the field, and you did it so well. 10 touchdowns in 1990. Everyone knew that. That's unbelievable for a fullback. What I admire about you the most, though, believe it or not, is your real passion for preparation. And everyone knows football players have to prepare, but if you could talk to me and the group about your preparation for the NFL show you did, because I would love to hear your theories on preparation, how you applied it, because you did such an amazing job on ESPN when you were there.
Well, listen, I actually appreciate that question. It's funny. I'll get opportunities to speak to high school, even college groups. And one of the questions I always ask, like, what's one of the most important things to be successful? My first thing is be prepared. Be prepared. That word to me is a powerful word. I think it can somewhat be misunderstood by people, what is really being prepared. So when you think, in the National Football League, I'm going to tell you this, what I learned early on, and I learned it fast, is not just being prepared. Wasn't just enough being knowing the opponent. The details of the opponent were critical. If you really want to be great, you have to know the details of your opponent. So when you talk about ESPN, I remember when I got my first, actually my second job, because I was doing college football, launched ESPN2. They had it's a long story, but actually a teammate of mine, Sean Gale, had basically kind of quit ESPN and the matchup show. So they wanted me to move to the matchup show. And I remember the producer, who's still there, Greg Cosell, he called me up. He said, "Hey, listen, you're going to be working with the two hardest guys that were the two hardest working guys on television, Mark Malone and Ron Jaworski." Okay, that didn't scare me. I was glad I could. Mark Malone was a teammate of mine. That didn't bother me. And he said, "Here's the requirements you're going to have. You're going to have to work hard and be prepared." I was like, when he had said that, I hung the phone up. I go, "I got this. I got this," because I know what working hard is and being prepared. Now, I didn't realize what prepared mean. Unfortunately, this pedestal my phone's on is sitting on a computer that has all the coaching tape of the entire season to this point. I get it I was just watching it before I jumped over here. So to be prepared, I mean, do I watch games on Sunday and Monday and Thursday? Yes. But I always tell people TV lies and highlights really lie. And I confirm that every week because I'll make notes. I'll jot something down I saw on television. I'll see a highlight reel. I'll jot something down I saw on the highlight reel. Then I plug in the tape. I think I have been right 0.01% of the time. And that's just because I played the game and I know some of the intricacies. I've studied it for almost 30 years. But then when you put on the all 22 angle, the wide angle and the end zone angle, and you look at a play in its due diligence, which, listen, fans just don't have that opportunity. That's why, when people make judgments, and even people who played, I tell people all the time, if you played, goes for me too. Once 2 years has gone by, you are irrelevant in the National Football League. 1/3 of the players are already new. You didn't play against. You don't even know who they are. Schemes evolve. They change. And if you can't watch tape, you just can't know. Now, here's the problem with it. It's not easy. It takes hours. On the matchup show, we used to joke. I used to take the second segment or third segment at some point, but it was always when Sal came to me. And I'd say, "Sal, 56 hours of tape study this week, 3 hours of charity work, and then 2 hours in the woods," something like that, right? So people will go, "You really spend 56 hours?" I'm like, 56 hours is probably the minimum to get ready. And there's 22 minutes in a half-hour show, which our show is a half hour. There is going to be about 7 minutes of content I get. It's going to take me 56 hours to get ready for 7 to 8 minutes. That's how much time it's going to take to get ready for those 3. But I am loaded to do. Now, I did other shows at ESPN, but once I did that, I could do any show in America at any time and every time. And I can give true insight. I don't sit there and go, "Oh, these guys are terrible." What's terrible mean? That's not even fair. If you're going to say somebody's bad, you at least explain why they're struggling, and as a player, that's honestly what drove me to broadcasting, is because so many people would point out things that were actually just so incorrect. And then they would say, just brutal things that were unfair. "Oh, this guy's terrible. This guy shouldn't have the ball. This is the first round pick." You could go into a game with a check with me system. And guess what? It doesn't matter who the runner is. It depends on the defense. That's how come there's so many things so that's why I thought, if I could help fans understand it to that level, but the only way I could do it was watching tape. And I remember my first show I did it with Ron Jaworski and Mark Malone. And I remember when I got done with that show, I said, I will never, ever sit on a set with Ron Jaworski and not be prepared. I will never do that, because that cat is prepared. Now, he had like 10 years experience before I got there, but I'm like, that cat I will never sit here and not be prepared. For 22 years, I never sat next to him and I wasn't prepared. And, doing that in any craft, I just think it goes back to a responsibility that is completely on you. And to be prepared clearly gives you opportunities too. Because I forgot to share with that matchup show that I ended up going to, because I had prepared so well with college. That's why they moved me there, because of my preparation aspect of college, and because they needed an NFL guy. That's what really ended up being the final straw for that. Them hiring me to move me over there.
I think what's so cool is we can all apply this to the teams that we lead when we tell them that Merril prepared, 56 hours for 7 minutes. That is phenomenal. Yet we see people, I'll just pick on salespeople that are not preparing for presentations and things that they need to do, not even close to that extent. So we're going next to Scott Garber in Colorado, who ran into a grizzly bear not that long ago. And if he was with Merril, Merril would have taken care of that grizzly. Mr. Garber, you're up.
Mr. Hoge, man, I want to first off say just thank you. I mean, this was incredible. Your vulnerability was, it's really cool just to sort of hear it from one of the GOATs in the game and on the broadcast side. So sort of piggybacking this conversation, you operate at such a high level in the public's eye, both on the field, now on set. I'm really curious, as I've gone through this journey, I found balance to be one of the hardest things to strike, and was putting in 56 hours of preparation for 7 minutes of content. How do you find balance from being in the public eye and dealing with some of these vulnerable situations that you've had to go through, these life testing situations? How do you find balance to share that with the rest of your family, friends, everyone else that's a part of this journey, while still being prepared when you show up there on set with Jaworski?
Yeah, Scott, I think that's a great question, and it's something that's, I think, difficult at times. Before we started this, we were talking about perfect health. Perfect health is nutrition, training, and rest. And most of the times, people forget the rest part. If you're eating right and training right, people forget about the rest being a critical component. That means removing yourself and doing other things. So let's use the 56 hours. I know this, I can only go for 3 hours at a time and be clear. Once I get after 3, I know this. I mean, the Chicago Bears look like the Cleveland Browns, and everybody looks the same, right? So I'm like, okay, this is time to walk away. And I have other things in my life. I mean, Scott mentioned, I love being in the woods. I love to golf. I like to train, and now training is done early in the morning. I think that is the most important thing I do for myself. And it's not a selfish thing, because I tell people all the time, your greatest investment is you and your health. This is the greatest thing you could ever do for yourself and others, because the healthier and the more vibrant you are, the more energy you're going to have for yourself and you're going to have for others. And it's funny, I've always felt that to be important. And it was largely due so I could be with my kids, I could coach them, I could be active with them, and my grandkids today, so I could still be active with them and do stuff with them. And what I found out, it kind of leads me to something else I thought is one of the most powerful things that happened in my life. It's really not the things that you say when you're a parent to your kids. It's really what they see. My kids, and actually through chemotherapy, my kids saw me working out during my chemotherapy. Then my daughter, for example, it resonated with her the most. And now what happens with them is they invest in their health, and in their mornings and in their days. So, I mean, the balance that you asked for, taking care of yourself, I just think that's got to be a pivotal part of your day. When you choose to get to it, that's completely on you, but get to it. And it's not selfish, and don't let something else rob you of that, because you're going to be better at what you do and better for them if you'll do that.
Love that.
Love it.
Appreciate it, man.
Love it.
You got it, buddy.
We're going to Daniel, Daniel is typically in these obscure places all over the world, but he is no longer. So Daniel, you are up.
Thanks, Scott. Sorry to bore you guys with my physical location, but Merril, a lot of respect for you. It's great to have the honor to hear from you and learn some of the lessons, specifically around mental toughness and preparedness. I kind of have an interesting question. It's more timely and it's maybe a little more sensitive, but it has to do with this idea of cancel culture, and with John Gruden making the news lately, and things that are happening just in the world. I'm curious if you could just in general talk about, what lessons we might be able to learn from that. I'm just curious to learn from like a football perspective, because obviously he's carried a lot of respect over the years, and I'm just kind of curious as a hot topic at the moment, and maybe it's not appropriate, but I did want to bring it up and get your opinion.
Well, something, I always refer to Chuck Noll in moments like this. And really how I was raised. I was born and raised in Pocatello, Idaho. Okay. I'm right next to an Indian reservation. Some of my best friends were Howard Whitefeather, okay, Rayburn Buckskin. We only had 2 black kids in our high school. Both of them ended up being some of my dearest friends. Marcus Montgomery played basketball, and Damon Coles on a football team. I grew up, and it's important, how people grew up, and where they come from, because when I get drafted by Pittsburgh, and I'll get back to that in a second, a guy named Greg Lloyd was drafted in the same draft as me, who's from the South, who came from a completely different environment that I came from. I never really experienced racism. I didn't know anything. Let me back up. I was taught to be respectful. All right. I was supposed to, you obey, you be respectful, you be kind. That doesn't mean you get trampled over either. There's a time that one has to stand up for themselves. Being respectful doesn't mean you get run over. I think sometimes that gets lost. So my environment that I grew up in, the first time I actually experienced any type of like racism was I watched the movie Roots. I don't know if you remember the movie Roots. Yeah. That was a big deal when I was a kid, and so when I got drafted to the Steelers, that was the first time I had really cross-pollinated with a lot of different cultures and a lot of different environments. And Greg Lloyd had come from an area where racism was big, he lived it and lived in it. And we lockered by each other. And one of the first times we were sitting next together, I just thought I should say hi. I'm like, we hadn't even said anything. It's uncomfortable. We just got drafted. And I go, how you doing, man? And he goes, screw you, white guy. I was like, I was like sucker punched. Like I didn't know. Now I could spend an hour of how this journey went, because we went back and forth, because at some point I was like, I ain't having that. I didn't do nothing to the guy. And for 10 years, we battled against each other head to head. I remember when I would go to Chicago, first guy to call me was Greg Lloyd. In fact, I just got done in an event with Donnie Shell, who was also next to me, Donnie Shell's event, and we were there. And Greg Lloyd and I are dear friends now. And he learned where I came from. I learned where he came from. And so I guess to answer your question, all the stuff that goes on, listen, I know this, and I always use this. In fact, 10 years ago, maybe longer, I put up a goal. Part of one of my goals was don't judge people. Don't judge them. I don't know why it is human nature to make judgments. And maybe that's completely wrong. Maybe I used to do it. I don't know. But it was really a goal, because I was like, here's what I do know. Nobody can go walk on water. There's not a person sitting in this movie can walk out and go on water. Now, your degree of sin or mistakes may be less or bigger than the next. That still don't make you right. That still doesn't give you authority to judge and cast judgment. And so being in that environment, I got to learn where somebody else came from. And people came from a lot different world than I came from. When they learned where I came from, it ended up being just a great blend. But sometimes I don't think we open the scope long enough to do that. Rather, you've lived in prejudice situations or racial situations, and it's hard to climb out of that environment. I was never in that environment. I talk to love people, respect people, and be respectful of yourself too. And I've been grateful that I've always followed those lines. I've always done that. It's always worked out for me. Has there been tense moments? Has there been moments like that? and they were uncomfortable for a long time. You know, with Greg and I, we went at it for a long time. I could share story upon story with him and I just going, I mean, saying things that if you heard him said today, back and forth, you know, because at some point I was like, wait a minute, I'm not going to take it anymore, you know, and I would fire back at him. And eventually it became just a great relationship once, you know, I think he took a moment to look at a bigger scope. I had already been on that bigger scope. I'm not saying I was the better guy. We just couldn't get along. I couldn't sit there and say, Greg, I didn't come from your world. I don't see the things. I'm not the people you may have seen down south. Okay. You know, you're my teammate, you know, and which I like about sports too. When we line up, we're black and gold, you know, you're my teammate. And that's what I do love about sports is, you know, if we'd all treat each other like we're teammates, you know, and we're trying to do all this together, and everybody, like, I'm a product of a lot of people. At the end of the day, I'm a product of so many people. Like this would be a boring conversation if this was just about me and what I knew. I mean, I remember I haven't said anything that I really know yet. I'm taking everything I've learned from other people. And I think we've all experienced this. You know what love feels like. You know what hate feels like. You know, and you know, fighting versus getting along and understanding doesn't mean you have to agree with anybody, but don't be disagreeable, you know, and listening to somebody else. As long as I think people open their mind and they don't be so standoffish that they're not going to just listen to you and be somewhat reasonable. Doesn't mean you got to go along with it, but not to be so angry that you want to start a war over it. I mean, I don't know if I can't remember. I mean, just today I saw I don't trust what goes on in the news very much, but like the Alabama loss cost, some people are arguing, somebody gets shot over it. And I was thinking, who takes it to that degree, you know? So, but I'm grateful for a lot of people and experiences. So I understand looking at other people's, you know, where they've been, try to find out where they've been. Once I understand that, I'm like, wow, yeah, I might have that view too, you know, and hopefully I could change that scope and see that not everybody's like that, you know, and get them to maybe grow a little bit too. And Greg Lloyd and I relationship, I always use him and love that guy. He's, you know, I can call him upright. And then you find, you know, another thing, I think you can always find a common ground. Yeah, you find something, right? It's music. Like he and I, you know, we found a common ground, hunting. Like we both like to hunt. You know, it's funny, like all the swords got put down, everything that had it was incredible. You know, now when I see him, it's a great, I love it. You know, I mean, wish more people could be like, I mean, we could all get to that point a little better. We would have less of this like this filter of just, and, you know, hate and anger that's never harbored into anything good. Never, anywhere, anytime.
It's absolutely beautiful. Do we have time for one more?
You asking me? Oh yeah. Scott, we'll for another hour.
Thank you, Scott. It's not necessary. I can take it home. It's not even necessary because I'm respectful of everybody else's calendar as well. And so much respect, Merril, for all the nuggets that you've dropped today. My question was, I probably touched on, but more specifically, I was an avid watcher of the NFL matchup show. And for sure, well, like all of us were, of course, I'm sure. But I always picked up on what I perceived to be a great chemistry between you and Jaws. And I was wondering if that was an immediate thing, or was it something that was built up on, or was the camera lying? Because I just thought that there was something very special with the two of you and the way that you bantered about and so forth.
I think it's a great question. It's the perfect thing one to end on because, Doug, I'm telling you, I love Ron Jaworski. Ron Jaworski and I, it was immediate. I'll be honest with you, it was immediate. And actually, I give Steve Sable the credit. Most people don't know this story. When we first started doing the Magic Show, I would have to fly there on Tuesday. I had to watch tape Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we filmed the show Friday. Because the NFL was so tight. They still are. They're still tight. You cannot get any coaching tape footage. on the way they all use it, like we use it as players, unless you're authorized. And they were not going to let that outside the building. I mean, over 25 years, it eventually came to tapes being sent to my house, to now it's, I can upload it. It's on my computer like in 24 hours. But we used to sit in a kind of an office where you could have two monitors, and he would sit that way and I would sit this way. And you just happen to talk to yourself because you have your producers there too, and you're editing stuff. And, I would be watching a play and talking about a play, and he'd turn and he'd like, well, that's wrong. I mean, what do you mean it's wrong? I remember Dan Marino, we're talking about this K4 play. I'm like, and I go, Dan should throw it to the fullback right here. You don't throw it to the corner because you threw a pick. And he's like, no, you try to take that corner. I said, you don't take the corner. So we're sitting going back. Okay. So these things happen all the time. Well, Steve Sable walked by one day. He sees this going on. He steps in the room. He's like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. You're leaving the best television right here. You, points to me, you're staying home. We're going to send you the tapes. I'll send you a machine. You're doing your work at home. And then we'll see you fly in on Thursday and you take the show on Friday. And that's how it started. I mean, but Jaws and I have always had, there's only at all the times in 22 years of him and I working on the set, only one time did I ever say anything. Now here's what Jaws, because I got used to being with Jaws. I could say anything to Jaws. I could rip him for something he said. I could say, I could just beat the tar out of anything. And he could do the same to me. We walk off the set and we walk off the set same way we walked on, loving each other, right? Well, Eric Kramer, this is early in my career. Eric Kramer throws a pick and Jaws is killing him. And I happen to mention, well, that's very similar to the black and gold. And I mentioned Super Bowl that he played, right? And man, I could feel it on set. I'm like, I went way too far here, right? So he didn't say anything. But Greg, my producer, got in my ear and he's like, I don't think you should ever say that again. I'm like, I said, Greg, Jaws, I'll never say it again. I apologize. He goes, I thank you. And we left it there. But that was the only time ever that I said something I know hurt him. And then that's because it still hurts him. I never went there. But after that, it was, so I credit Steve Sable because Steve Sable said, this is done. You guys, you're leaving all the good TV right here. Do it out there. So when I would show up on set, he had no idea where I was going to come from. I had no idea where he was coming from. So it was very spontaneous. It's real. When he'd say stuff, I'm like, oh, get that. Ain't no way. There's no way that's happening. And he was like, you are so caught up. So came off, and that's how, good chemistry. I don't think you can fake good chemistry. That's actually the Monday Night Football's problem still to this day.
Yeah.
They're starting to create the chemistry that existed 30 years ago.
Yep.
May never happen again. I worked with tons of people. I love so many people I love, but Jaws and I did have a magic that it happens. You get lucky. I'm fortunate that I had that with him.
Guys, we are fortunate that we just got to spend an hour with an absolute legend. Merril, I cannot thank you enough.
No, Scott, I want to thank you and everybody. I mean, this is absolute great energy. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Thank you very much. How can we support you? We're a community of 400 leaders at companies like Google and Microsoft, and you name it, in this community in 27 countries. How can we help support you?
Well, Gus, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. And if I think of the biggest way, listen, I love speaking. I love platforms where I can come out and share my story with people in a way that hopefully they walk away thinking about their own abilities to take action and that they are truly in charge, not about me. I love it when people start talking about themselves when I'm done speaking. That is a fabulous way. Another foundation I'm a part of is the Chuck Knoll Foundation. It's about brain health, brain research. I'm passionate about those things. So in those avenues, if I fit, that would be awesome. And I appreciate you even asking. That's very nice, Scott. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Everybody, thank you very much. Have a phenomenal day. Thank you very much for carving out an hour of your time. This was incredible. Merril, I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you. I owe you,
soon.
Scott.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, brother.
Be good.
See ya.
Thank you.
What's up, Mr. Derby? Tag.
Cranking. I'm glad I was able to get in on this today.
I like those shirts.
Thanks. A little bit of the Chiefs concept there, but yeah.
Looking good. I like
Red
it.
Raiders.
I like it. Merril was phenomenal. My big takeaway, 56 hours of prep for 7 minutes. And when we think of professionally, are we doing anything even remotely like that? And he wasn't talking about, 56 hours of training to run a play in football. He was talking really about a business setting, yet so much of us in our corporate lives, we have drastically different expectations and we expect great results. And I think you get the type of results that Merril Hoge gets, he put in the work. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was really good.
Really good.
Yeah, amazing message. I love the Walter Payton stuff mixed in with Chuck Noll. And just interesting, all of us coming in with, different fan bases. I'm a Giants guy, but there's certain places and programs that, why wouldn't you want to know how the Steelers tick when Chuck Noll was running them and what was behind their success? And, same thing behind a Walter Payton. And I just love it. There's just so much stuff in here to take back to my coaches and my student athletes. It's amazing. Plus, personally.
Yeah, it was cool. Very cool. Well, thank you guys. Great seeing you, Ricardo. Rob, my man, a couple weeks away from seeing you. I'm excited. Launch party, right?
100%. Yeah, we're locked in on 100%. So I let my wife know, which is rare. I usually am a person that lets her know the day of or day before, and she has to scramble with 4 kids and make it happen because she won't say no after I already said yes for us. So I already told my wife. So yeah, we're in, all in, 10 toes down.
I'm going to be with Itzler and the rest of that crew this weekend, so I'm excited. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That'll be fun.
Let's go.
All right, guys. Have a phenomenal day. Thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate it.
Bye. Bye, everybody.